My life was wonderful. I had a loving wife, a daughter, and a cozy home. I was truly happy. But one day everything changed when my wife brought home her lover. I was hurt and offended. They humiliated me and I didn't know what to do. At some point, I realized that there was only one way out of this situation, and I decided to take a risk. This story is familiar to many people. I thought my life was flawless until that fateful day. I, Ryan Moss, was married to an amazing woman with whom we had an adorable 6-year-old daughter. Tiffany, or just Tiff, I met when I was in my final year of university. She was in her first year and our affection quickly blossomed. We got married a month after I graduated. I pursued an engineering degree and got a decent job in a reputed national engineering firm. Tiffany also pursued her career by becoming a paralegal in a law firm. However, 2 years after our daughter Jenny was born, Tiffany left her job to take care of the baby. Our life was idyllic until Jenny went to kindergarten. When she started attending, Tiffany returned to her job at the law firm. I should have anticipated the change, but I was blinded by my faith in my wife's love. I believed she loved me as much as I loved her. Looking back, I realized the warning signs were obvious. Tiffany began to dress more provocatively, our intimate life dwindled to non-existent, and she became increasingly aloof. When I asked her about the long hours at work, she assured me she was just working hard for her senior partner, emphasizing the financial benefits to our family. But that all changed the day I met her boss, Stan Cross, at a Christmas party. He struck me as arrogant and dismissive. I watched them closely, but I didn't notice any overt romantic gestures between Tiffany and her boss. They were reserved, but that could have been deceptive. The situation reached a critical point when Jenny was finishing kindergarten. She was going to spend the weekend with my parents, and I hoped to use this chance to reconnect with Tiffany and renew our relationship and intimacy. I dropped Jenny off at my parents' house, planning to return home for a cozy dinner and movie night with Tiffany. However, as I entered the kitchen, Tiffany came down the stairs. She was dressed in a short dress and heeled shoes, her hair impeccably styled, her makeup perfect. "Wow, baby, you look amazing," I said. "I wish you'd let me know we had plans. I'd get ready. Where are we going?" Tiffany smirked. The sight was unsettling. "We're not going anywhere," she replied. "I'm going somewhere, but not with you." I was puzzled. "What are you saying?" "I have a date, and this is just the beginning. We're making new rules starting today. My boss is taking me to a party and I won't be home. We have a room downtown." "What the hell are you talking about?" I exclaimed. "You need to calm down and accept it. This is how it's going to be. I'll leave and come back sometime on Sunday." "Bullshit. If you think I'm going to take it, you're wrong. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." "No, Ryan, I'll come back to our house. We'll still be married and I'll still live here, just like you. But you have to understand that I love you, but I need more. If you insist on complicating things, then you won't live here anymore." It would be a shame for Jenny's father to break down in prison. Her remarks rendered me speechless. I was about to turn to her, but the doorbell rang. Tiffany hurried to open it and greet her boss. He didn't respond positively. "I think you should explain the consequences of non-compliance," he said. Stan wasn't particularly imposing, but stood about my height, maybe a little shorter. "Mr. Moss, it seems we have some matters to discuss," he said. "Discuss? I'm inclined to give you my opinion," I replied. "You could try to do that, though from the looks of you, you might take a few blows before my driver intervenes and you pass out. By nightfall, you'll find yourself behind bars. So please have a seat," he continued. I looked out the door and noticed a stout man looming behind Stan. Sighing, I settled down again. "Okay, now we can talk like civilized people," he said. "When your spouse agreed to work as my personal assistant, she also took on additional responsibilities." "Yes, I mean part-time work in bed. I have been dating your wife for the past 6 months, but she has grown tired of our secret meetings. The relationship between the two of you will undergo a change. As my personal assistant, she will fulfill my professional and personal requirements as needed. Mr. Moss, you are still Tiffany's husband. Your role as spouse and parent will remain unchanged, with one exception. I will make sure Tiffany is as comfortable as possible with me in bed. Usually these matters are handled at the hotel or office, but there may be occasions, especially when you are away from home, when we need to use your bed." "I will not tolerate this," I said, full of contempt. Not this man, nor our crumbling marriage due to her infidelity. Mr. Moss, such expressions are useless, Stan replied calmly. Don't forget who I am. I'm a prominent lawyer working for the largest law firm in this city. If you file for divorce, there will be consequences, and I don't just mean the legal aspects. He continued, naturally, as a result of the divorce proceedings, you will lose everything. You will have to pay alimony while she continues her relationship with me. As for your beloved daughter, you will have no access to her. You will face serious charges of inappropriate behavior and parenting. This will result in jail time and permanent loss of visitation rights. You will likely be fired from your job. Your family and friends will turn their backs on you. I sat there in shock, unable to find the words. Stan continued, now I know you won't do anything stupid. If you dare tell my wife, you will face the consequences of everything I just described, along with a visit from my driver and his accomplices. If you try to skip town, we'll hunt you down. Be a good guy and accept this new arrangement. Your wife is a great helper. He leaned closer to my ear and whispered, she's exceptional at this. I watched my wife walk away with her boss, now her boyfriend. I was devastated, not knowing what to do. I drowned my grief in alcohol. Woke up alone with a hangover on Saturday morning. Tiffany didn't come home Saturday or Sunday. She wasn't around when I went to pick up Jenny on Sunday. Holding back tears, I picked her up and drove her home. Jenny almost broke my heart when she asked where Mom was when we got home. I wanted to tell her that Mom was having fun, but instead I replied that Mom had to work. The disappointment on her face hurt me deeply. When Tiffany finally came home Sunday night, she found me sleeping in the guest room. Thankfully, she didn't come in. I wasn't sure if I would have been able to stay calm if she had. I was busy getting Jenny ready for school when Tiffany suddenly appeared. There wasn't much talking to me. Instead, Tiffany focused on Jenny. As we left for school, she kissed Jenny goodbye and then tried to kiss me, but I turned away and walked away. Later that night, after Tiffany put Jenny to bed, she stormed off in a rage into what I called my basement cave. We're going to have a problem, she spat. What kind of problem? I asked, thinking about her weekend with her boss. She stood with her hands on her hips. I never thought this would happen. It started innocently enough. Stan and I had coffee in the morning. He liked the special creamer I take with me to work. I'm sure he was eager to share his specialty cream with you. I remarked sarcastically. Don't be vulgar, Ryan, Tiffany replied. Stan knows how to be persuasive. Remember how I always said I didn't like sushi? I've never actually tried them. Stan claimed it was incredibly delicious. The first time he convinced me to try it, it was also the first time we were close. I'm sorry, Ryan, but it happened. He even promised to promote me to personal assistant. Think of the perks: higher salary, the chance to travel with Stan and meet influential people. It's a win-win for us. Stan mentioned you could get back into a relationship under certain conditions. Oh my God, I can't wait to hear about those conditions, I replied, feeling my anger rising. You can't talk to me like that, Ryan, Tiffany said. You need to accept this reality. This isn't a permanent arrangement, a couple years at most. We'll have a much better chance at our future together. Do you really believe all that nonsense? I asked. So in your world, once the Honorable Stan is done with you, I should just be there to grow old with you? And then what? Just wait until good old Stan decides he wants to have a baby and let some other guy raise it. Tiffany lowered her head in shame. Holy shit, are you pregnant yet? No, but he suggests I stop taking the pill after a few months, she admitted. I told him I want you to be completely okay with our new relationship before we discuss it. I can't believe you kept that from me, I said. Tiffany walked up the stairs and turned back around. I'll be waiting in our bed, but once I stop taking the pill, I won't be available to you until you realize this is getting out of control. She needed to realize that I would never go along with her plan. I retreated to the guest room and my basement, trying to maintain a normal life for Jenny's sake. Over the next week, I did some research on Stan. It became obvious that he had power and influence. He bragged that he had sought legal advice from a divorce attorney. I was informed that divorce would lead to my ruin. An attorney familiar with Stan Cross expressed concern that he might resort to making up charges against me. The divorce became untenable. Instead, the attorney suggested gathering evidence of my wife's conspiracy. If I could get evidence of their conspiracy against me, perhaps I could thwart their plans. However, she warned that even with evidence, It would be difficult to overcome Cross's credibility. She recommended using a discreet voice-activated recorder, placing it in Tiffany's purse. This would potentially yield valuable information. I followed the lawyer's advice. I got a pen-like voice recorder and discreetly placed it in Tiffany's purse next to the other pens. Despite the unlikelihood of success, I decided to take the chance. I began to explore alternatives, but quickly realized that my options were limited, at least within the bounds of legality. Determined to find another way out, I headed to the library to use their computers. After watching many detective shows, I realized how important it was that the police could not trace a suspect's internet search history. After several hours of searching, I formulated a risky idea born of desperation. 3 hours away, I stumbled upon a dark Oriental goods store. Concealed beneath an old hat, sunglasses, and unassuming clothing, I hoped to remain anonymous. Upon arrival, I found the store empty except for an elderly gentleman who cautiously approached the counter. "I need tetrodotoxin and dimethylmercury," I said. The old man met my gaze with an understanding smile. "Dealing with a cheating spouse?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, making no secret of my intent. "Can you provide what I'm looking for?" His smile grew wider. "Sure, but you'll have to pay for it. $1,500 in cash. Discretion is of paramount importance to you, I assume." I assumed $2,000 would be enough, but only brought $1,520. I counted out the money and placed it on the counter. The elderly man disappeared out the back door and quickly returned, handing me 2 substances in a paper bag. "Be careful with these substances. Small doses will be effective over time," he said. Then he put 2 syringes in the bag. "They will help administer the drug. Avoid contact with the skin. It is recommended that you dissolve it in liquid for consumption." I grabbed the bag and hurried to the car. Tetrodotoxin and dimethylmercury are poisonous substances associated with marine life. Tetrodotoxin is derived from fugu fish and blue-ringed octopuses. When cooked properly, these creatures are considered delicacies, but in concentrated form, they can be deadly as they accumulate in the body. My research has shown that both dimethylmercury and tetrodotoxin gradually accumulate in the body until it is too late. These substances are difficult to detect, but if found, the symptoms will resemble food poisoning from tainted sushi. The most advantageous aspect of my plan was that Tiffany would handle the delivery of the poison for me herself. She kept the Dan's specialty creamer at home until she had to replace the bottle at work a few months ago. When I asked why she didn't bring it all to work at once, she expressed concern that someone else might take it. Those creamers were her special fondness. I assumed she meant that they were exclusively for her and Stan. The creamer was non-dairy and did not require refrigeration. Tiffany kept a supply of creamer in the pantry, with 11 bottles in an open drawer. I carefully selected one to test. The cap was not tamper-proof, but there was a paper and foil seal underneath. I decided to start with the tetrodotoxin in the first bottle, not wanting to risk exposure to dimethylmercury, which I had read could be lethal on contact. Following the instructions I found, I filled the syringe with tetrodotoxin and carefully punctured the seal. After slowly injecting the liquid, I examined the bottle for any signs of tampering. Satisfied with the result, I repeated the process with all 11 bottles. I then proceeded to inject dimethylmercury into each bottle with much greater care. After 2 weeks, the stock of cream had dwindled to 10 bottles. I began to feel guilty and regretted my drastic action. Tiffany's behavior, however, made my decision much easier. It was Thursday night, which we had planned for Sushi night. On Thursdays, Tiffany and Stan often worked late and enjoyed sushi, which came to symbolize their closeness. Jenny and I had dinner together before I put her to bed as usual. Later, I retired to my man cave. Tiffany came down the stairs with a defiant look. "If you're hoping for any intimacy, you have a month left," she said. "Stan and I have decided that after a month, I will stop taking birth control pills. After that, I'll only have sex with Stan." Rage boiled up inside me. How does my wife allow me to have intimacy with her before she gets her boss pregnant? "I'll be upstairs in our bed," she said as she climbed the stairs. "It's been too long since we've been intimate." "You've forgotten what real intimacy is," I parried. Some might argue that I was going too far and I should just end the marriage, but given my circumstances, I viewed my actions as a form of self-defense. Tiffany and her boyfriend were threatening me with what I cared most about, my daughter and, secondarily, my freedom. Although I recognized the reprehensibility of my actions, they were provoked by unspeakable threats. A week later, I noticed that there were only 9 bottles left in the creamer box. It was another month before the first symptoms appeared. I kept a close eye on Tiffany when she was home. Her complexion seemed paler, but it was her hands that caught my attention during dinner. Tiffany flexed her fingers and they tinkled in her hands. It became obvious that her nervous system was being affected by toxins. "Tiff, is something bothering you?" I tried to show genuine concern. "I don't know, my fingers are going numb. You know, like when you lie on your hand and it goes to sleep. It's been happening for about a week now. I also have a little shortness of breath. Probably nothing serious. It sounds like stress." "Any new problems at work stress you out or cause you anxiety?" I asked. Tiffany replied with a slight chuckle, "No, there's nothing wrong at work. I'm sure it's no big deal." 2 weeks later, there were only 8 bottles of cream left in the container. They must be drinking a lot of coffee, I pondered to myself. Tiffany's symptoms were becoming more and more obvious: aches, shortness of breath, and pale skin. It was Thursday evening, and Tiffany came home right after work, surprising me with her appearance. "What are you doing here, Tiff? Isn't it sushi night?" I remarked sarcastically. "I'm not feeling well, and neither is Stan. He decided we weren't working late tonight," she replied. "Well, that's bad timing, isn't it?" said I with obvious confusion. "You and Stan are supposed to be starting a big project, aren't you? It's hard to realize it if you're both sick." Tiffany stepped close to me and whispered, "Don't be rude in front of our daughter. I'm going to go lie down after dinner." After dinner, I walked Jenny to her room and got her ready for bed. As I walked past our bedroom, I heard the sounds of vomiting coming from the bathroom. I cautiously opened the door and saw Tiffany. "Aren't you assuming you're already pregnant, damn it?" I asked. "I'm not pregnant yet," she growled. "I only stopped taking the pill last week. Show some decency, I'm really unhealthy." "Decency? That's funny, hearing you say that," I replied. "I'm your wife, Ryan, and you should treat me with respect and decency," she said. "No, my wife died when she took that job with that asshole. She was replaced by some woman I don't respect. If you think you're going to get any respect or even kindness, you're wrong." I interrupted her and walked out of the bathroom, leaving her by the toilet. The next morning, Friday, Tiffany didn't wake up when I dropped Jenny off at daycare. Although I should have checked on her, I didn't bother. Around noon, my phone rang. The message was from Tiffany. "I need you to take me to the hospital." "What's wrong?" I asked. "I'm sick, but it's not me, it's Stan. He had a stroke." I couldn't contain my laughter. "Are you seriously asking me to take you to your lover in the hospital?" I asked, not believing my ears. "Please, Ryan, it's not a joke," she replied. "They said he might not make it." Not wanting to arouse suspicion, I decided to take the afternoon off. When I got home, Tiffany looked terrible. I helped her into the car and we drove to the hospital. There we met her boss's wife and one of the other senior partners, Larry Masters. Masters quickly took Tiffany aside, making it clear that he knew about their affair. "Tiff, do you really think you should be here? His wife is here too," he said. Tiffany, ignoring my presence beside her, turned to Masters. "Urgent, Mr. Masters, I need to know his condition. I need to see him." Masters gestured for her to step aside, and they began to discuss the situation quietly. I followed them at a distance, listening intently. "You look terrible, Tiff. The situation is not good," Masters said. "He has paralysis on his left side, and the doctors have mentioned organ failure. They're not sure of the cause, but if they can't intervene soon, he may not survive the weekend." Tiffany cried and begged, "Please, Mr. Masters, I need to see him. Could you distract his wife while I sneak out? I promise to be quick." Masters walked over to Stan's wife and in-laws, helping to distract them. I accompanied Tiffany to the ward. Stan looked terrible. The left side of his face had sagged, and although he was conscious, he couldn't speak. Tiffany rushed to him and I stayed at the door, feeling the pain of seeing her hugging and kissing him. Tiffany sobbed harder and harder until a nurse came in, urging her to leave. The nurse helped my wife out of the room, leaving Stan and me alone. Stan's eyes widened as he recognized me. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. "Stan, you're on your deathbed," I said, looking straight into his eyes. "Before I go, I want you to understand, I didn't heed your advice. I wasn't faithful and rejected your idea of a new relationship. Don't worry, I will inform your wife after you die of all the deceptions you have perpetrated on me and my wife. And before you go, know that I orchestrated this. There is nothing you can do to stop it, I said as I left the room. As soon as I left the room, the machines connected to Stan began to sound alarms. This prompted the nurses and doctors to rush in. They managed to keep Stan alive for the weekend, but he passed away early Monday. When Tiffany heard of her boss' death, she was devastated and her health deteriorated even further. That Monday, after picking up Jenny from daycare, I came home and found Tiffany in bed. She confirmed the loss of her lover. The bitterness was evident despite her weakened state. I'm not going to pretend to mourn his death. He destroyed our marriage and got what he deserved, I said. Our marriage isn't ruined, Tiffany replied. I can't believe you're so heartless to Stan. My feelings for him didn't diminish my love for you. It was just a means to improve our financial situation. You knew I would always come back to you. No, Tiffany, that's nonsense. Our marriage is as dead as Stan. Remember, I was in the room when you confessed your love to him right in front of me, I replied as I walked out of the bedroom. Tiffany was in tears. By the end of the week, her condition had deteriorated to the point where I had to rush her to the hospital on Friday. Saturday morning, the doctor spoke to me. Mr. Moss, your wife's bodily functions have gone haywire. Her blood shows unusually high levels of mercury and another toxin commonly found in fish. Is she consuming a significant amount of seafood, perhaps sushi? The doctor asked. I struggled to contain my laughter. Yes, she and her partner have been indulging in sushi frequently over the past few months. Partner? Puzzled, the doctor interjected. I'm sure you know about him. Stan Cross passed away in this hospital just last Monday. He and my wife were involved in an affair, which clears things up, I replied. Despite his stroke, her symptoms are very similar to Mr. Cross's. Unfortunately, I'm afraid she doesn't have much time left. Her kidneys failed early this morning. It's only a matter of time now. The doctor escorted me to her room. Tiffany was hooked up to various machines and looked extremely frail. Her eyes cleared as I entered and she gestured weakly, asking me to come closer. Her breathing was labored and it was difficult for her to speak. Tiffany signaled for me to lean in. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I realize now how deeply I've hurt you. The doctor informed me that I don't have long to live. I need to hear that you've forgiven me before I go, she whispered. I leaned down to her ear and whispered, My beloved wife, I promised you my everlasting love when we exchanged vows, no matter what, in sickness and in health. Those were my words. You swore your love and loyalty to me, but you broke those promises by humiliating and insulting me. I cannot forgive you for what you have done to me and our family. May you and your lover suffer in hell. A tear rolled down her cheek as I got up and left. Less than an hour later, an alarm sounded in Tiffany's room. She was pronounced dead. I told Jenny that her mother wasn't coming home. My tears were for Jenny, not Tiffany. Tiffany tried to ruin my life, but I stopped her. The doctors concluded that both Stan and Tiffany were victims of sushi poisoning. The transfer of Tiffany's body to the funeral home signaled the end of the autopsy or further investigation. No police officer ever approached me for questioning. I disposed of the remaining bottles of creamer and vials of toxin at home. I even took a partially full bottle of creamer from Tiffany's office when I picked up her belongings. When I arranged for Tiffany's body to be cremated, her parents objected because of their religious beliefs. However, I ignored their objections, determined to destroy her body. Along with the cremation, any remaining evidence would be destroyed. Despite my desire for revenge against Tiffany and Stan, I was not satisfied. I gathered my notes and made duplicates. My first stop was at the home of Georgia, Stan Cross's widow. You might ask why I was confronting Stan's wife now that he had died. My intention was to find out if she knew about the events and if she was involved. I strongly suspected that she was aware of it, given Stan's openness. As she welcomed me into her home, I turned on my pocket recorder. Mrs. Cross, I'm here to talk to you about your husband and my wife, I began. She interrupted me. You can stop there, Mr. Moss. I knew about my husband's affair with your wife. Their affair was quite prominent. It may not have been his first affair, but it was definitely his last. I'm sorry for what happened to your wife, but as you can see, I lost my husband too. Thank you, Mrs. Cross. I want to clarify something. You knew that your husband had poached my wife and turned her against me and my daughter. By not taking action, you are as guilty as he is. Wait a minute, Mr. Moss. I had nothing to do with my husband's actions. I suppose we'll have to disagree on that, Mrs. Cross. From my point of view, if you had interfered with your husband, he might not have dared to harass my wife. Perhaps my child would still have a mother today. Knowing that you were aware of the situation, it will strengthen my position when I claim his property for the pain and suffering he has caused my family. I left her house without further discussion, despite my attorney's warning about the slim chances of success in fighting for Stan's estate. In addition to the attack on the Cross estate, I was driven by a desire for revenge. I sought to hold the firm for which Stan and Tiffany worked accountable. Initially, my attorney doubted that they would oppose us without Stan, but that changed when Larry took over, but when I presented a tape of Stan's conversation with his partner, Larry Masters. As my plan progressed, maintaining civility with Tiffany became a challenge. During one of my flashes, the recorder captured a crucial conversation between Stan and Larry in Tiffany's office. The recording discussed my resistance to their plan. Larry offered his assistance with the plan, boasting of his connections to law enforcement and the judicial system. He threatened to use these connections to eliminate me if I did not comply. Although my attorney warned about the admissibility of the recordings in court, we decided to take advantage of it anyway. My T set up a meeting with all the senior partners, including Larry Masters. We didn't divulge the exact reason, just speculating that it might relate to life insurance. I wanted them to be caught off guard when we walked into their conference room. Each of the 7 senior partners expressed their condolences on my wife's passing, including Masters. They all assumed we wanted to discuss Tiffany's life insurance policy, which had been deferred by the insurance company. John Hager, the managing partner, rose from his seat. Mr. Moss, each of us extends our sincere condolences for your loss. We understand the difficulties you have faced in securing life insurance. The payout from the insurance company on your wife's policy, which our firm provided, was delayed. I am pleased to inform you that we have successfully intervened to overcome the obstacles. Hager then handed me a check for $500,000 from the insurance company. I put the check in my pocket. Mr. Hager, that's not why we're here. We are here to offer your firm a chance to resolve a serious matter before we escalate it by taking legal action against each of you and your law firm as a whole. As you can see, Mr. Hager, your firm was complicit with Mr. Cross in a plan to lure my wife out of the family, arrest me, prosecute me, and put me in jail. Hager stood up indignantly. How dare you come here and accuse our firm of such crimes? You have tarnished the reputation of one of our late partners. Mr. Moss, I will not sit here and allow you to make false accusations. Mr. Hager, we can leave now, but I can assure you that all of my accusations are true. I have evidence to back them up. I suggest you simply ask Mr. Masters if I am telling the truth, I replied. All eyes turned to Masters, who was wriggling nervously in his chair. They expected him to refute my assertions, but he remained silent. At my lawyer's signal, a snippet of a tape recording of a conversation between Masters and Cross discussing their plot against me was played from his phone. Hager turned pale and, after glancing at his partners, turned to me and my lawyer again. Mr. Moss, if you'll excuse me, I need to speak to my partners alone. 30 minutes later, Hager returned alone. What are your terms, Mr. Moss? Your firm will compensate me and my daughter in the amount of $5 million. Otherwise, we'll sue, and the compromising tape I shared with you will become public. It's that simple. My attorney informs me that Masters will likely lose his license to practice law, and perhaps the same fate awaits the rest of your partners. The revelation that they influenced prosecutors and judges could damage your firm's reputation, even if you and your partners keep your licenses. Hager requested several days to discuss my proposal with his partners. My attorney stepped in and agreed to provide that time. You have 2 days to agree, or we'll go public with everything, I said. 2 days later, my attorney contacted me and informed me that they had agreed to a payment of $5 million. He also mentioned that he would send the proposed agreement as part of the arrangement. We agreed to make no claim against Mr. Cross's estate. In return, they would dismiss Mr. Masters from the firm, citing a moral clause that would strip him of his 90% interest in the partnership. I accepted the terms and received the funds. I signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding the actions of Mr. Cross and his firm towards me and my family. As Tiffany had predicted, the affair left our family financially secure. Now I had to start looking for someone to play the role of my wife and the mother of my child. This is the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments. It will be interesting to read. Also, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss new, no less interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!
Thank you so much for watching my video and your time. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button. Also, I am very interested to know your personal opinion about this story. You can write it in the comments. I will definitely read it and reply to you personally.